Unanimous yes vote, motion carries.
Okay, that takes us to item 12, the taxable pension obligation funding bonds. Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you. Thank you, and good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight for your consideration is a resolution which, if adopted, provides for the issuance of one or more series of City of Eureka taxable pension obligation funding bonds and approving the forms of and authorizing execution and delivery of an indenture relating thereto and authorizing a validation action and certain other actions in connection therewith. At the time of joining a CalPERS risk pool, a side fund was created to account for the difference between the funded status of the pool and the funded status of the plans. By combining agencies into larger risk pools, the year-to-year volatility of the CalPERS rates was reduced. However, all entities came into this combined risk pool with different funding levels. CalPERS created side funds for each agency to account for the amount that they were either over or underfunded. CalPERS currently charges 7.5%, which is a recent reduction of their former rate of 7.75% interest on the unfunded liability amount. Currently, the city's public safety side funds are estimated to be about $7.8 million. Refunding these side funds with the issuance of pension obligation bonds will save the City of Eureka about $1.4 million in present value dollars, with an estimated interest rate of about between 2.9 and 3.1%. A significant step in the bond issuance process is for staff and consultants to prepare a series of documents, including the indenture, which specifies the bond contract terms. The indenture was provided to you under separate cover. Staff is recommending that the City Council approve a resolution approving this indenture, which declares the city's intention to authorize bonds to refund the unfunded liability of the CalPERS side fund obligation. This resolution also authorizes the filing of a validation action in the local superior court. This involves filing a court action to publicly notice the city's intent to issue bonds and refund an existing CalPERS obligation. And this is something I believe that the city attorney would take care of on our behalf. If there is no challenge, the validation is ratified by the Superior Court, typically within 90 days of its filing. This validation is necessary to affirm bond counsel's position that the bonds are exempt from the constitutional debt limit because they are being issued to refund a pre-existing obligation. Once the validation process is completed, there will be additional documents for the City Council to approve, such as the preliminary official statement. The sale of bonds will also need approval by the City Council. So this is Council's first step. There will be further actions required if Council desires. So thank you for your consideration in this matter, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions for Paul on this? Mike?
Yes. Thank you, Paul, for the email to answer my questions about the difference between the cash deposit, the estimated cost of approximately 7.8. You put it into a little clearer terms there, and the estimated cost of issuance and the underwriter's discount, which is actually the cost of the bond itself, right?
Correct. I mean, it's one of the costs, yes.
One of the costs. Could you go into a little bit about what you put down below in the rest of your email there, that
certainly
we just can't pull this money out for other things?
Right. So let me start with what the resolution the resolution that you're considering tonight shall not exceed the unpaid principal amount of the PERS contract plus the underwriter's discount plus any original issue discount plus any other costs of issuance, and that's language straight from the resolution. So we can't just pull more money out for other purposes. It is restricted to the purposes that are spelled out in the resolution. So in coming up with the not to exceed amount of 8,250,000, it was a number that was arrived at with input from our longtime financial management consultants, PFM, or Public Financial Management, along with input from our bond attorney, bond counsel, Oric, Sutcliffe, and Harrington, and also our underwriters, Piper Jaffrey. After all the costs that we have, and actually, we're looking at a par value of about $7.9 million. And talking to Sarah Hollenbeck, our consultant this afternoon, we have estimated costs of issuances of almost $200,000, underwriters discount of about $80,000. So there's really about $250,000 to $300,000 that could potentially be out there for other to spend funds on. And in talking with Sarah, the reason that they bumped that up is we do have the opportunity to possibly purchase bond insurance for a better rating. And if this is the case, and we will of course only do this if it saves the city more money, but potentially we can get another percentage or basis points knocked off of our interest rate. So if we had to, say, pay another $200,000 for bond insurance, it could potentially save us, $300,000 or $400,000 or $500,000 over the life of the loan. So they built that that, I don't want to call it a cushion, but a little bit more just in case it became appropriate to get bond insurance.
And further, in the conclusions here under the report, you said the city was to save about $1.4 million over
Correct.
14 years.
Correct.
So that's then $100,000 a year approximately for the savings.
Correct.
Okay. That was my main question there. I just wanted to confirm that was the amount of money there, and that it was 1.4 over 14 years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Melinda, go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify that savings essentially comes from the interest rate that's now 7.5 going down to 2.9 to 3.1, and whatever the deal is that day that we close the deal is what we get.
That's correct. It's exactly like in this case, and it's not only always this way when you're talking about bonds that cities issue, but in this case, it's exactly like refinancing your home for a lower mortgage interest rate.
Nice.
I remember my one last question I had for you here, Paul. This is side fund that isn't to be repeated again. We're not going to have another side fund agreement on this particular issue?
Not on this issue. I can, PERS, we have existing issues coming up right now with pension reform. I can't speculate on what the future holds, but at this point, these side funds were created back in 2004, I believe, when agencies with under 100 employees, and this is where I know the city has more than 100 employees, but we currently have two side funds, and for this purpose, just combine them for public safety. So the two side funds, the employees each have under 100 employees, and we are combined into a pool with other agencies for police and fire with under 100 employees in each pool, into that pool. So I don't think the city has at this point, or PERS is not requiring anything at this point to create anything new. If you will recall, back, gosh, we used to be what's known as super funded. So in other words, the city didn't have, the rates were doing so well that PERS was making enough to cover the employee, or the employer contributions. But things have changed, and this is part of that effort to smooth out the rates, to reduce the volatility. And then this is our opportunity to, take advantage of some advantageous rates right now out in the market.
Any more questions for Paul? Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll open the item for public discussion. Is there anyone present that would like to comment on the agenda item? All right, seeing no one, we'll close the public comment period and return it to council.
Paul, I had one last question. It just occurred to me, and it may be a silly question, but I've got to ask it. Is there any way that that amount of money would go up on this side fund from PERS? Is it going to be at this amount, and that's all that we owe to them on this particular matter?
Yes, and as my wife tells my kids, the only silly questions are the ones that aren't asked, and it's a very confusing, finance, a side fund, what is that? These are funds that were created back, 8 years ago, and, in talking, our auditors are here right now performing the audit on the 6/30/12 fiscal year, and in talking to him yesterday, I said, well, what are the risks really? And he goes, well, the risks are that PERS could become super funded again, and we had a good laugh about that because that's just not happening. And I don't know if that really specifically answers your question per se, but this at the time that the fund was created, we essentially were short. And so that number is not going to change. It was arrived at by the CalPERS actuaries, and we are paying it off over, I don't remember what the original term was, 20 years. Yeah, thanks.
So if CalPERS were to become superfunded, would we then not have to use some of the bond money that we have here, or what is the case there?
Well, we would be locking ourselves into this. I mean, that certainly is a risk, but I don't think it's a I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, I don't believe that we're going to become super funded again at any point in time. That's the risk that you take. We know that we're going to be 7.75, or excuse me, now it's 7.5%. That was the big move that PERS made to help, the agencies that had side funds. And what is that, 0.25%? We're going to bump it down 5 or 6%. I mean, if rates could go down to, it's like, and that's why I want to really liken it to refinancing your house, or even, when you're going through that period and where you're going to lock your rate in. Could rates drop again tomorrow? Sure, but they could also go up. So, in 4 years' time, could rates go back down further, or could they go back up? Sure, but I don't think. I think this is a really good financial opportunity for the city, and it's a risk that I feel confident in taking.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Darian.
Paul, one other quick question then that just came out. If it was done in 2004 and it's been 8 years, how does that come out to be 14 years of payments left if it was 20 years to begin with? Is my math wrong?
Well, we're going to refund the bonds from here for.
So we're
going to pay them off over the next, I believe, 14 years.
So we're shortening the length of time that we're paying this.
I want to say we're going to mirror the life of the bonds, and in going through the through what the underwriter gave us, I counted out 14 more payments. It could be by the time we issue these bonds in January, it's 13. But again, what we're looking at this evening is the indenture, and those terms will be spelled out in black and white when I come back before you with the preliminary official statement for your approval, and that'll have everything really dialed in and lined out at that time. That was a question I had for the bond counsel on Friday in talking to Trish Ike, our bond attorney in this matter, and she said, well, these terms are kind of, I don't want to say fuzzy, but we don't have everything tonight, but that's not what we're trying to do tonight. We're just trying to get the process started, and city council will get much more information as the process goes on.
Okay, thank you. Entertain a motion then at this point. Oh. All right. I think we did public comment. We did it.
No.
All right. I thought we did it. All right.
No public comment.
Is anyone present that would like to comment on this agenda item? Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Leave it to council.
I move the recommended action.
I'd second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Go ahead and vote.
Unanimous yes vote, motion carries.